I'm Rosemary Armeo, and I want to thank you for tuning into my podcast, newly christened with this episode, Beyond the Brink but Fighting Back. You know, we used to be on the brink, but we have toppled over the edge, I'm afraid. And I'm hoping that you will get the image I have of this wily coyote who routinely fell off the brink of cliffs, but he never fell down. And it's not a road runner we're dealing with, of course. It's a new Trump administration that has brought danger and atrocities into our daily life. And so we're planning every week to talk about those, about ways to fight back, and about managing to survive until we have succeeded. And so for this first episode of Beyond the Brink, I've invited my old WAMC roundtable colleague, Jim Hendler. Jim is a really nice guy who's giving us some of his very valuable time to be here. He is also a bona fide genius. I'm going to read not even all of just the first 2 lines of his bio. We used to joke about how it took up half the time on the 2-hour roundtable to read his full set of credentials. But listen to this. James Hendler is the Tetherless World Professor of Computer, Web, and Cognitive Sciences at RPI. He is also the founding director of the Institute for Data, Artificial Intelligence, and Computing. And on top of all that, he's the director of the RPI-IBM Artificial Intelligence Research Collaboration. This guy knows what he's talking about. So Jim, AI, it seems to be all over the news everywhere I look these days. I'm going to ask the big picture question right at the top here. How afraid should we be of this?
So any new technology, right, brings fear with it. And sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly, sometimes how it's used, sometimes how it's misused. I think AI is a very powerful tool. And like any power tool, if I give you a big chainsaw, you can use it, if you're a lumberjack to cut down big trees. And if you're a regular gardener, you can, we had a tree fall down in our yard the other day and somebody with a chainsaw came and fixed it. Or you can do the Texas Chainsaw Massacre deal, right? So it's not the chainsaw, it's the person holding the chainsaw that I'm scared of, right? Which may make this a very good episode of Beyond the Brink, because the chainsaws are currently being held by a lot of, if you've heard the term, the bro-oligarchy.
Yes.
Very much the tech, a lot of people who control large technology spaces that are using this AI. And it's not that they're misusing the AI, it's what they're using it for, which, surprise, surprise, is to make money, right? And so, I can give you lots and lots of examples and things like that. Textbook publishers, right? An awful lot of what's in the textbooks used by kids across the U.S. is coming out of what Texas approves. That's gone down a little bit now because Texas has gotten a little crazier, but it was the biggest market. So since they sold the most books there, they didn't want to be selling, 50 different copies of, intro to whatever. And, if the Texans opposed the discussion of creation, of evolution without creation and some of that stuff crept into the textbooks. Now what we're seeing is that you don't need to be a textbook publisher to do that anymore. You can, be a podcaster and have your opinions heard, but you can also do it through just your friends groups on social media, things like that. And a lot of that, the AI algorithms are working. Question is, who are they working for, right? So one of the things that's caused social media to become so toxic, for lack of a better term, or maybe
that's a pretty good term.
I was going to say for lack of a stronger term, is because the algorithms were originally designed to sell you things. Well, the longer you're on a site and the more you're interacting with that site, the more you're seeing advertisements. whether they're subtle advertisements that are sort of snuck into the text, whether they're real advertisements on the side, whether there's things that are clickbait that cause you to click on something and then see advertisements. So what were the AI algorithms tailored to do to get you the best answers, to help you make friends with people who are different than you? No, they were tailored to figure out what would keep you going. There were a lot of studies in the early days which showed that, uh, one, people, of course, like people who sound a lot like them.
Right.
Two is some people like just the opposite. They like fighting. That's where a lot of the trolling and stuff comes from. Um, you get the bubbles, which are now out way beyond social media. So, every time I go on the round table, I look at the stories and I watch them on two or three different channels, as well as looking at them on a few different media sites. I swear they're like totally different universes.
Yep.
And, you take something like what's happening today in Chicago, and you can find 30 different ways of describing it, of people saying different things. Now, are they wrong? Are they bad? Right. That not the problem. The problem becomes when, if I have one point of view, I'm only seeing other people who share that point of view. Or if I tend to click on certain kinds of things and watch them, I'm going to see more and more of them, more and more of which are now even being made by the AI, so they don't need to, have as much human intervention. So, and an awful lot of them, you get these little 30-minute, 40-minute movie-ish things that right when it gets to the punchline says, you got to go down to the comments, click here to go see the story. And then when you click on the
I hate that.
Exactly. And so, that's not AI doing anything wrong. That's the people using it, tailoring it.
Exactly.
And they're tailoring it based on what they know about the algorithms. So, back before all of this fun with social media, back just in the early days of search, or even middle days of search, okay, Google would periodically change its search algorithm. The reason is because people would start to optimize what they had on their website so they'd show up higher up on Google, right? So by periodically changing it, Google made it harder and harder to do that, until people started complaining and saying, hey, I'm not going to put my money on your site if you're going to keep changing these things, because, I do something that costs me some money and starts driving traffic. And now you've just changed something. So I'm going to go somewhere else. Well, so what's Google's response? They started being more open about.
They accommodate. So my question was, how afraid should we be? And
so you're saying how afraid should we be? And my answer is, I'm terribly afraid of the people who are misusing AI.
Right.
I'm not at all afraid of the people who are appropriately using AI.
And who would you put in that category? Give me one example of a good use of AI.
I use it all the time. Again, I asked it before I signed on to your thing, who would be some good people for Rosemary to interview? And what's interesting.
Oh, I want that list.
Yeah, well, it as it always does, it generates pages and pages of stuff. And then I say, give me some real names, and it gives me some. And, some of them are people who it would make sense, who you'd love to have on the podcast, but might be a little harder to get. Like,
I really want Kim Kardashian. Is she on the list?
No, but Preet Bharara is.
Oh, yeah, he'd be great.
Stacey Abrams is, and that, but Omar Muhammad. But then, there are other people on here who really are people who are more at the level.
Right, accessible.
Yeah, so it used, and even then asked me at the end, I didn't keep following, it says, Should I get you more big name guests who would draw wide attention, or reachable regional but in
That's,
places?
yep, that's exactly that's
So,
very accurate, very
well, and
useful.
so what's one of the things that takes you a lot of time in planning a podcast? Or who am
Right,
I going to ask? What am I going to
right,
ask them? So for that kind of brainstorming, it's not bad. Programming, I don't know of any professional developers who aren't using generative AI,
right.
but you have to be better than the AI.
Yeah. I use it all the time as a professor. I use it for, okay, well, I'm doing a lecture on immigration. I want to know all the major pieces of legislation I should be talking to my students with. And it always comes up with stuff like, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. That'd be
Right.
great.
But at the same time, you know enough to check those things.
Exactly, exactly.
That sometimes it gives you one that's appropriate. Sometimes it gives you one that's
It's off the wall crazy, yeah.
and
Jim, but I'm sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting you because I'm trying to keep you to a time here. We could talk on this forever, I know. I'm not hearing you say any of the science fiction stuff that the media likes to emphasize. I'm not hearing you say computers are going to take over from the humans, that they're going to start
I
generating
definitely do
themselves.
not believe that. I
Okay.
think that I could go into lots and lots of details. I did a TED talk on this some years ago where I started by saying, I'm going to do something that's a little bit challenging and argue with the smartest man in the world. And I talked about why Stephen Hawking's views of AI as dangerous were wrong, because the arguments he was making had to do with all sorts of things. And a lot of the modern ones are not necessarily wrong, but they're responses to society, right? Is television good or bad? Right. Well, in the early days of television, that was a heck of a fight. And,
Right.
you still have places where they won't show certain channels and things like that because they contradict the religious beliefs or the other thing. So again, part of the problem with the AI technology is who's wielding it. And what does scare me a little bit is the large military investment in it. Now,
Yep.
most of that is extremely responsible. In fact, the first set of let me call them ethical AI principles, actually came out of the Department of Defense. The first government ones
Right.
came out of Department of Defense and were really basically said we should never have AI in a position where it can kill anyone without a human in the loop. I'm simplifying drastically.
Yeah.
Right. We already have plenty of systems for years that, you push a button and it fires at some target. These are called fire and forget. But you always had the ability to destroy it on the way.
Right. To
Now
intercept
they're
it.
getting better at recognizing targets and things like that. But again, that's the same thing. Now, people talk about new models, this drone warfare, things like that, right?
Right.
Russia can now send a whole lot of planes with no pilots in it. But those planes still got shot down sometimes. They got dropped their bombs sometimes. It's still warfare. They're still being driven by humans somewhere who either program.
What about switch from military to the arts? There's worry that there'll be no original painting, no great novels, that creativity, the human mind will be wasted.
Right. So a lot of that again gets back to the use of this thing, right? Is if I'm a good writer, it can be a productivity aid. If I'm a bad writer, it'll make me a worse writer, potentially. Right? I can get it to sort of give me arguments on any side of the story. I have sitting in front of me now, just for fun, I asked it if I'm a supporter of Make American Healthy Again, what arguments should I use? And then I said, if I'm an opposer, what arguments should I use? Both times it gives me very strong, well-reasoned seeming things. And, they're five totally contradictory things. The AI knows nothing. It has no intention. It has no desires. It has none of that stuff that makes us human. So,
I don't know if you saw this, but the columnist Lucian Truscott did a really interesting column about AI, and his argument was creativity won't be lost. In fact, the very whole language models that they train AI, that powers AI, are filled with some of the very ideas that are under attack today: justice, fairness, critical race theory. So he's saying that AI might be a way to preserve and spread, to distribute these ideas even more widely. Do you see that?
And yes, and again, it gets back to that issue of who's doing it, what are they using?
Right. Who's got I love that. Who's got the chainsaw?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's when I ask it for arguments in favor of MAHA, I'm stunned by how many of them it gives me that actually make sense.
Yeah. It argues it better than Kennedy does. Yeah. He could have used that when he was in front of Congress the other day. So, okay, who's holding the chainsaw? That gets to my next big question that I really wanted to talk to you about. That's Trump's executive order 14179. It's more than just an order. It's been kind of operationalized. And the idea is, which on the surface sounds good, even though it's a Trump idea, I got to say it sounds good, that America should be the leader. It should be the model of innovation in AI. Yet there's some parts of it that give us pause. Does it not?
Very, very much so. So that executive order led to something called the AI Action Plan.
Right.
AI Action Plan has a lot of that kind of stuff. I described it to a colleague as the first third is a bunch of stuff that's aimed at the MAGA base, who they know aren't going to read the second and third part of it, which get into the technical details. But then when you get into the technical details, there's really two big things going on there. So one is really anti-regulating AI, right? So there was an article that just came out. In fact, there'll be a congressional hearing on it tomorrow, that Meta removed some of its rules that are aimed at protecting children on the web. Right, a whistleblower said that was happening. There's, I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say tomorrow, how they're going to defend themselves.
We probably should explain. We are taping this on a Monday, so it's actually on Tuesday, September 9th that we're talking about this hearing.
I apologize. Yeah, I'm so used to being on the radio now.
I know we're not dealing. By the time this gets out, people will know a little bit of what was said.
It'll happen, but but again, and there have been many other whistleblowers saying that, sort of in response to Trump saying let's not regulate, and in response to a lot of people being willing to pay a lot of money to make the arguments that you and I might disagree with, and to make them sound good, and to make them feel good. We've talked about deep fakes sometimes. Deep fakes is where you're doing this with voice and video. So I could take the video of me on this thing, and I always could edit over it and make things with it. It just took a lot of time and effort. Now it's much cheaper and much easier. Okay. So, and I think the legal system is going to have to catch up with that, and it hasn't yet. So a lot of what I think is going to control this stuff will be the legal system. Unfortunately, the legal system right now I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of, say, the current Supreme Court or things like that, being in
I have
charge of.
no idea why you would say that, she said
Yeah.
sarcastically. Yeah.
But they're going to be the ones who eventually may have to rule on some of these things.
But not according to Trump. If his plan actually is put into operation, that would not happen. It's going to be industry policing itself.
Yeah. So basically, it's industry policing itself, but there's this whole section on it saying, as long as they don't police themselves to get rid of, well, as long as they aren't woke.
Yeah, talk about that, because that's in the
so-
section that's in the section of the plan that you talked about in the first third.
Yes.
Definitely intended for the MAGA base.
So when you talk
And
about
DEI is supposed to be eliminated. I'm sorry, I want you to talk about that.
Right, absolutely. But for example, when you say AI can help with justice, fairness, critical race theory, et cetera, the answer is, yeah, it sure can. But it can help with all the opposites of those too.
Right.
And who controls it, and when do they get yelled at? So, 5 or 6 years ago, the AI companies were saying, please regulate us.
Right.
What's happening now is we put something out and we get sued. Right? Musk came in with Trump and convinced Trump to go just the opposite way, which is say, let them do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why he took over Twitter, and many of us who used to have lots of tweeting, you and I both. I don't know about you, but I haven't.
I have not even looked at it since Musk took over. I don't want to.
And that's frustrating because it used to be a good way to reach a lot of people.
Sure. And there is no replacement either. There is no replacement for we keep hoping for it, but yeah.
Then there's places on these systems where you can find huge amounts of conspiracy theory stuff. A lot of people who believe that a lot of that is AI generated. Now, you would then talk to the people from that side who would say a lot of the traditional news being reported is AI generated. How do you decide? Used to be don't believe what you read in the papers. Now it's, don't believe what you read, see, hear. So I think what is going to be necessary to keep AI under control is very simple. It's just teaching people critical thinking. Of course, what is one of the things that's being attacked by the current administration?
Universities that teach critical thinking. One of the other things, along with DEI and woke, whatever the heck that is, in MAGA minds that are under attack in this AI action plan, is climate change. That's very clearly, we're not supposed to say it's a hoax. I mean, we are supposed to say it's a hoax. It isn't real. And so that brings me to a question that really makes me the most nervous about AI. It's not that, it'll eat my brain and take over my life, but that truth just becomes indistinguishable from massive information, from opinion, from viewpoints. And we already can see it happening. Disinformation right now is a huge problem. AI, as you mentioned, has the possibility of deep fakes or of creating the past so that it looks like it's real and happening now, which is, I guess, both good and bad. It's very scary. Reassure us about this.
Well, I mean, again, it's the usage, how it's done. Without getting into the politics of Gaza, before the whole October 7th thing happened and the whole situation went to hell, there was a lot of use by Hamas and other groups that were showing, atrocities. And then when people actually went to check on those, they were discovering that those were things that had happened somewhere completely different.
Right, different times.
So you're just putting a different label on something that's already there. That was never hard.
Right.
And then if you have the distribution channel to get that out, do it. Now the problem is, instead of 3 TV stations, 30 TV stations, 300 TV, we have 3 million, right? To everybody on TikTok, everybody on social media. And so we really need people to learn how to figure out what they're hearing makes sense. And right now, a phenomenon that's really a problem is people tend to believe in the things that that reaffirm what they believe in. And there was a famous experiment done where an old an old law that had passed, I forget when, but it passed with absolute bipartisan support. Right. They brought in people who were asked to self-identify as Democrats or Republicans, and you had four conditions, right? A Republican was shown this and said a Republican created this. A Republican was shown this and said a Democrat created this. And then the opposite, right? Democrat was told this was Republican.
Right.
And off the charts, right? The Republicans who said it was done by a Democrat thought it was horrible. The Republicans who thought it was done by a Republican thought it was really good, vice versa. So, we're built that way. Our brains do that. And now,
yeah, I actually think that's a big
stuff you agree with. And AI will help you find the stuff you
right. So I actually think that's a problem that the media has long had, that we did not listen to the idea, for example, that COVID began in Wuhan in a lab because Donald Trump and his maggots were forcing that idea. We did not want to believe it, and so we did not take it seriously. And I mean, it still, I guess, is not really definitive, but it certainly should have been looked at. It was real. And I see that all the time, the stuff that Robert Kennedy says. I just want to say, oh, that's baloney right off the bat. And you can't.
I was listening to a bunch of people who should know better talking about how, now it's been shown that the masking stuff went too far.
Right.
Schools, et cetera, and that's become received wisdom.
Right. You just want to side with Fauci, though, if you're a liberal. So you don't believe it. Yeah.
I was studying the data the whole time. You may remember this
yes.
from the show, and we were looking at the numbers, right? And you'd have two counties next to each other, one with a masking rule and one with a no masking rule. And now you have a really easy way to say, is masking maybe helping? And it was. I mean, differently, maybe we should have done some things earlier. You can talk, now most of the talk is about economic impact, right? We would have had much less economic impact if we had been willing to, not use all this stuff. But of course, 1 million people died.
Yep.
Right. What's the economic impact of 1 million people? I mean,
well, in the schools too, there's lots of talk about whether keeping kids out of school or closing down schools or studying at home, the impact. Why is that effect still going on?
And a lot of things that came out that were negative about that. But one that you rarely hear talked about was an awful lot of school systems. So children didn't tend to spread COVID the way they do many other.
Right.
But their teachers got COVID, and not. So there were schools which literally had virtually nobody to teach the kids. So putting kids in classes of hundreds of people running around.
This is all hindsight that you're talking to, looking at data collected after the fact.
So the hindsight has been much more focused on the economic damage than on what was going on at the time. You and I discussed many times how the CDC and others were just doing a terrible job of explaining things. And in fact, a couple of us who'd been on the show actually taught a course at RPI called Teaching Techies to Talk to the Media.
Yes, and I remember this. That was a very smart idea. A lot of that.
Unfortunately, I was doing it with Terry.
And he left.
Who's now at Harvard.
But to me, again, I have never been afraid, really. I guess when I think about it, about AI taking over my body or my life. But the information stuff, it's already in trouble, and I don't see it getting better. I don't see a path forward.
Well, I think the path forward that's possible
Okay.
and again, who gets to push back and how do we do it, is um, so in TV, kids learn to tell the difference between commercials and programs pretty early on. Programs work harder and harder to sneak in commercial-ish things. Now, I'm talking about broadcast television.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to decide if I agree with that because the government banned commercials aimed directly at kids because they were so susceptible and like badgering their.
But by a certain age, you found the kids have pretty much learned what's trying to sell them something, what's trying to amuse them, and what's real.
Right. Okay. Pretend and fairy tales and all that. We've always kind of had a two-tier system that kids get lost.
And stunningly, kids have been really good at telling the difference.
Yeah.
Now, the problem we have is we have adults who don't know how to tell the difference, who are not really helping the kids learn how to difference. So the kids are trying to kind of pick it up on their own. But again, you look at who the biggest influences are. I mean, Taylor Swift or someone like that. You can argue politically about Taylor Swift, but the kids aren't primarily watching Taylor Swift because they care about her political beliefs. They like the music, right?
Yeah, that is true.
And again, you can go out in podcast world and find beautiful ones like yours and horrible ones. I won't name names like Tucker Carlson or anything, but you can imagine people who maybe wouldn't be.
The influencers are another interesting thing. We probably could do a whole segment on influencers, and they're not really talking politics much at all. They talk makeup and products to buy and fashion.
And the advertisers go there. And where AI is playing out there is just in the background of help. So
I don't know if you've seen this lately, Jim, but I've noticed that on my social media feeds, there's a lot more discussion about this. Is this real? Come on, where did you find this? There is some critical thinking going on because we are getting sensitized to the idea that we don't know the difference between pretend and real.
Yeah, and I think that as the generation that some people call the digital generation, it's a fast-moving world, right? My kid is what's called a twitcher.
Yes.
They play games in real time and have a side thing where they keep a conversation going.
Yep.
And the people who are good at both splitting their attention between the game and the side do quite well. Turns out that's actually really beneficial to people who have ADHD. They're very good at doing exactly that kind of.
Really? Because it calms them down and kind of keeps the focus? Is that
No. It's because they can hyper focus on two things.
That's fascinating.
So they're hyper focused here on the game, but they can be reading and doing. Now, not all of them, and there's lots of
Yeah.
But so some of the most famous Twitchers are people who play the games the best, but others are the ones who have the most interesting content.
Right.
On the side, which may not be as big.
And
things like that. But now kids can choose who they want to watch and why they want to watch. And that one isn't the AI. Where the AI comes in is once the kid has been making those choices, the AI starts to reinforce them.
Right. We are talking with Jim Hendler, who is, he's done work on, he's a scientist and a professor at RPI, a pioneer in artificial intelligence, and so what I call a bona fide genius. And so I have to ask you this very important question, Jim, and that is, can AI really help to make a better beer?
So at the risk of talking about a former radio station you were involved with, so I showed Ray one time so there had been some joking going on between he and I about making sandwiches. So I showed him that ChatGPT could come up with sandwich recipes. And we ended up doing a food show.
Oh my gosh.
With ChatGPT as the guest chef and a human chef. And what people would do is they would send in 5 or 6 ingredients that they couldn't imagine how you would put them together. The AI would generate a recipe using those ingredients, and then the chef would comment on them. And she was snarky and wonderful, and most of the time said, yes, if I went to a party and it served me those appetizers, I would definitely leave that party immediately. But then other times she was saying, that's actually pretty good. I wouldn't have thought of that combination. So again, to really use AI right, you need to know more than it does. You were asking me, is it going to put artists and creative people out of work? My belief is what it's going to do is give a power tool to the most creative people to increase that creativity. But the problem is the people who are sort of mediocre creative now can start catching up to now what would be considered more creative. And then where do you put that? And how do you judge those things? And some people again, I won't pick any particular genre of literature, but there's genres of literature that I think are absolutely crazy and stupid. Can't believe anyone reads them.
Like romances? Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah, I did. Modern,
but they sell like millions of copies.
They do, right? Yeah.
And then there's books I read that I suspect, that I have quantum computing for the novice sitting on my bedside table. And
String theory for idiots.
I swear someday I'm going to get past page 6.
Well, I had not really intended to do a commercial for Ray Graff and Vox Pop, but that was really a great example. That's really very fun. And there are all kinds of articles out there. As I was doing research on this, on brewers are taking a look at basically recipes, and so are vintners too,
and lots of others. But the key thing is, you get 10. You ask the thing for a lot of advice, and then you winnow it using your
It's like going to an expert.
Actually almost the opposite. It's going to a generalist.
Right. Oh, right.
Going to someone who knows a whole lot about all the different kind of beers different people make,
but at a thin level. Yeah.
At a decent level, but yes, but you as the beer maker are saying, oh, now that one's an interesting one. Mm-hmm. Or I'm a beer maker who's never made a sour, and I hear that the millennials drink a lot of sours. How do you make a sour? Okay, so now I've got the basic recipe. I can start playing with it. I can start doing the things I would do with beers. So did the AI make me a better beer, or did the AI just help me?
Help me to do it. I've used the simile of AI as the way a calculator was. It didn't destroy math. It didn't make humans unable to do any kind of calculations. It resulted in deeper and more profound use of mathematics.
It's funny. I use that all the time as my example.
Oh, good. So I must be a genius.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were a genius for a long time. You know it.
And on that lovely note,
everything I can to promote you, including arranging big auditoriums full of people to come hear you.
Yes, I remember that. That was very fun. We did a program at RPI. I want to thank Jim Hendler, and we end our podcast with a toast. And so today's toast is to the new technology of AI. May it be used for the good of mankind and for the deepening of knowledge and the deepening of culture. and the bettering of politics, and not for anything evil and sci-fi. How's that?
I like that.
Okay.
I'll stick to that.
You'll take that.